Boston is the capital of Massachusetts. It is the largest city in the New England state and is rich with history. This is why over 12 million people visit the city every year. It is a very old city, founded in 1630 by English colonists fleeing religious persecution. The American Revolution, when colonists known as patriots fought for their independence from British, began in Boston with the Battle of Lexington. Other key events in the Revolution occurred in the city. One was the Boston Massacre, when British troops fired upon protesters, killing 5. The Boston Tea Party, when colonists dumped an entire shipment of British tea into the harbor to protest taxes, was not a party at all. Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, where he warned colonists of British troops approaching, also happened in Boston. Many of these sites can be accessed by taking a walk down the Freedom Trail, a red line of bricks embedded in the ground through the city. Boston is also a city of notable firsts. America's first public school was founded in Boston in 1635. Boston Common, where British troops camped during the American Revolution and where early colonists hanged people, is the oldest public park in the United States. Boston is also home to the oldest subway system in the United States. Like many cities in the United States, immigrants played a large role in its development. Irish immigrants who settled in Boston, for example, played a large role in both local and national politics. Boston also has a large active Puerto Rican community and Italian community. President John F. Kennedy and his family have ties to Boston. Boston is also well known for many colleges and universities that surround it. Some of the most famous are Harvard and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Boston attracts more than 350,000 college students from around the world. The American Revolution was a war of independence fought by those living in the 13 colonies of North America against Great Britain. Those living in the colonies were especially angry about taxes the British were forcing them to pay. People felt taxes were unfair because there was no colonial representation in the British Parliament. One tax was the stamp tax, which taxed printed materials such as newspapers. The colonists called this taxation without representation. Colonists who wanted freedom from English rule were known as patriots. Those who supported British rule were known as loyalists. Before full-scale war broke out, there were many acts of protest by patriots, like the Boston Tea Party, when Bostonians boarded British ships and dumped 342 chests of tea into the harbor because of tea tax. On April 19th, the first shots were fired in Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, which officially started the war. Many people were involved in the struggle for independence. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams worked together to write the Declaration of Independence. On July 4th, 1776, patriots declared themselves free. Most people know George Washington was the first president of the United States. Before that, he was the commander-in-chief of the Patriot Army. Most of the battles in the American Revolution were fought in the Northeast in places near Boston and New York. The British, known as Redcoats, because of their red uniform jackets, had help from German mercenary soldiers called Hessians. Patriots had support from other Europeans. France entered the American Revolution on the side of the colonists in 1778. This helped force the British surrender at Yorktown, Virginia, in 1779. However, fighting would not formally end until 1783 with the Treaty of Paris, when Great Britain recognized the United States as an independent nation. The American Civil War happened from 1861 to 1865. The main cause was Southern states feeling that the U.S. federal government in Washington, D.C. should not have the power to tell them what to do. This was especially true about two issues: taxes and slavery. The Southern economy was based on agriculture, while the Northern economy was based on manufacturing. Southern crops like cotton were sold to factories, and then Southerners had to pay taxes on the finished goods sold back to them like clothing. Many Southerners felt this was unfair. Additionally, the agricultural economy in the South was reliant on the labor of enslaved Africans and their descendants. Many people, especially from the North, felt this was wrong and that slavery needed to be abolished. Southerners felt the abolitionists were threatening their way of life. 7 Southern slave states banded together, declared their secession, and formed the Confederate States of America. The government in Washington, D.C. and its army was known as the Union, since they were fighting to keep the country united. Abraham Lincoln was President of the United States during the Civil War. The President of the Confederate States was Jefferson Davis. The first battle was the Battle of Fort Sumter. During the war, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared the freedom of slaves in the Confederate States of America. This action was supposed to show that Lincoln was still in charge of the entire United States. The Civil War was the bloodiest war fought inside of the United States. 620,000 were killed and millions more were injured. One of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War was the Battle of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. 51,000 people from both sides died, more than in any other battle. The Civil War ended in 1865 when General Robert E. Lee of the Confederate Army surrendered. Fires are destructive. They also create changes. In 1871, a fire burned most of Chicago to the ground. Many people think the fire was started when a cow knocked over a gas lamp. Most of the city at the time was built of wood. This, combined with the famous Chicago winds and a drought, made the city burn down quickly. The fire lasted for 3 days. 100,000 people were left homeless, and at least 300 were killed. What was amazing was how quickly the city was rebuilt, eventually becoming the 3rd most populous city in the United States. The Great Boston Fire of 1872 created a property damage of $73.5 million, more than any other fire in the U.S. history. Most of downtown Boston and the financial district burned down in the fire that began in a warehouse basement. 30 people died, and thousands lost their jobs and their homes. However, the city was rebuilt in 2 years. It began enforcing building regulations because of the fire. The 1911 Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City caused the 4th highest loss of life from an industrial accident in the U.S. history. 123 women and 23 men, all garment workers and mostly poor immigrants, died from the fire, smoke inhalation, or falling or jumping to their deaths. Child labor was not uncommon. The youngest victims were 2 14-year-old girls who worked in the factory. So many people died because the owners of the factory locked the doors to their stairs and exits. This was to prevent the workers from taking breaks and stealing. As a result of the fire and huge loss of life, many people began protesting poor working conditions. The U.S. Congress passed laws improving factory safety conditions. Women workers also formed a union to fight for better working conditions. Salem, in the state of Massachusetts, is called the Witch City. But don't be afraid. There aren't women wearing pointy black hats riding around on brooms. The New England city is called the Witch City because of the infamous set of trials that happened there in 1692 to 1693. At the time, the city was just a town in the British colony of Massachusetts. The Salem witch trials accused more than 200 people of being witches. People believed witchcraft was real and was criminal. Among the accused were women, men, and even children. 19 people were sentenced to death. They were all hanged. One of the accused was tortured with heavy rocks being placed on him until he was crushed underneath the weight. 7 others died in jail. There was never any proof that those accused and convicted were really witches. Historians think the people would accuse people because of family feuds. Other historians think that a domino effect occurred, with people becoming hysterical after one accusation. Fear of witches spread like a disease. The Salem witch trials have become a part of the city's history. The Crucible, a play about the trials by Arthur Miller, has been turned into a movie. The city is not ashamed of its past, but rather uses it to teach tolerance and earn some tourist dollars. There is a memorial dedicated to the innocent people who died because of the witch hunts. There is a witch museum that tells the story of what happened. Many people visit Salem around Halloween. Salem police cars have witch logos. A local public school is known as the Witchcraft Heights Elementary School, and the Salem High School sports teams are named the Witches. Films, television shows featuring fictional witches have been filmed in Salem, including Hocus Pocus and Bewitched. The United Nations, an international organization founded in 1945 after the Second World War by 51 countries, has its headquarters along the East River in New York City. Technically, anyone who visits UN headquarters is not in New York anymore. They are not even in the United States. That is because the land and buildings are considered international territory. The United Nations has its own flag, its own post office, and its own postage stamps. There is no need to change currency. However, the UN uses the US dollar. 6 official languages are used at the United Nations. They are Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. UN rules override the laws of New York City. This does not mean that people can commit crimes there and get away with it. There is no immunity to those who commit crimes there. The property where the United Nations now sits used to belong to a slaughterhouse. The current buildings were completed in 1952. The perimeter of the UN is lined with flagpoles, with the flags of all 193 UN member states and the UN flag. They are arranged in alphabetical order in English. Some may think it's great to be a neighbor to a peacekeeping agency like the UN. Many New Yorkers don't think so, though. Every time a dignitary like a president or a prime minister visits, streets are closed, making it hard to get around and to find parking. You don't need to be a diplomat to visit the UN, though. There are tours Monday through Friday, and not just in English. Guided tours are available in English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Mandarin, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, and Swedish. Visitors can have a meal at the delegates' dining room, featuring a buffet of food from all over the world. Apples don't grow in New York City, so that's not why it's called the Big Apple. There are many legends about how the city that never sleeps got its name. One story says that a famous brothel owner named Eve gave the city its name. Another version of its history claims the name has its roots in show business, with performers calling New York the Big Apple, since it was the best place to get noticed. There is one legend that says the city got its name because of the large number of unemployed selling apples on the streets of New York City during the Great Depression. The term more likely has its roots in horse racing from the 1920s. Prizes were called apples, and a newspaper reporter, when writing about races, often would call the big prize the Big Apple. In fact, the Big Apple soon was used to mean any big city. In the late 1920s through 1940s, the Big Apple was not just a nickname for New York. It was also the name of a song, a dance, and a place to dance and sing. New York City was the first heart of the jazz music scene in the 1930s and 1940s. In Harlem, uptown Manhattan, there was a club called the Big Apple. There was also a 1938 short film of the same name featuring black jazz musicians and dancers. In the 1970s, the city tourism agency began using the term the Big Apple on purpose. There is even a street corner in Manhattan called Big Apple Corner. One New York City baseball team, the New York Mets, have a big red apple that pops out whenever the Mets hit a home run in their stadium, Citi Field. While the origins of Big Apple nickname are unclear, it seems to be here to stay. The original World Trade Center opened in New York City in 1973. The most famous part of the complex of buildings was the Twin Towers. They were named because they were almost exactly the same. The only difference is that one had a tall antenna on the top. When they were built, the 1,368-foot tall buildings were the tallest in the world. Such tall buildings needed a way for people to travel in them. The towers had 95 elevators in total. Visitors used to travel to the 107th and 110th floors, where there were observation decks from which one could see the entire city and New Jersey. Inside, there were offices, shops, a hotel, and on the top floor, one of the towers, there was a restaurant called Windows on the World. The restaurant even hosted a salsa night on Thursdays. A number of subway lines ran underneath the towers. The World Trade Center complex, with a total of 7 buildings, was so large that it had its own zip code. In 1974, a Frenchman walked a tightrope between the Twin Towers. The World Trade Center survived a bombing in 1993. The skyline and spirit of New York City were changed after September 11, 2001. That morning, 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center in downtown Manhattan. At first, the top floors of the buildings were in flames. Soon, they came tumbling down, covering lower Manhattan in hot metal and ash. A total of 2,753 people died. For weeks, the air smelled of burnt metal and plastic. It took 8 months for the site to be cleaned. Years later, the World Trade Center is rebuilding. There is a new tower called the Freedom Tower. There is also a memorial and a museum to honor those who died in the 2001 attack. Green isn't the first word that pops into most people's head when they think of New York City. Yet, in the middle of Manhattan Island is the most visited park in the United States. With 35 million visitors a year, Central Park, a National Historical Landmark, takes up 843 acres of land. It is a green space where people go to escape the noise and crowds of urban life. Before it opened in 1857, it wasn't an empty space. People lived on that land. They were mostly poor, free blacks, Irish, and Italian immigrants. They were forced off the land to construct the park. One section of the park is called Sheep Meadow. Now, it's just a grassy area where people can lay in the sun, but actual sheep used to graze there from 1864 to 1934. The sheep from there were eventually moved to another park in the city. Many events take place in Central Park, especially in the warm spring and summer months. There is an outdoor theater where Shakespeare's plays are performed. The plays are free, which causes such high demand that people line up for hours before performances to get inside. There are also free music concerts. Every summer, a stage is set up. These summer stage concerts feature musicians from all over the world. Both the New York Philharmonic Orchestra and the Metropolitan Opera also host free performances in the park in the spring and summer. There are also 2 small zoos inside the park. There are a number of small lakes in the park. One of the lakes rents out a small mechanical sailboats. There is also a puppet theater and a carousel for kids. The park is not dead in the winter. When it snows, families often go to sled or to go ice skating in an outdoor rink owned by Donald Trump. The Marlboro Man was a fictional character who appeared in several advertising campaigns for the Philip Morris Corporation. His ads ran on television from 1964 through 1999, effectively entering the collective conscience of the American people for generations. Philip Morris is one of the largest tobacco-producing companies in the world, and the corporation used the Marlboro Man with great success over the years. The Marlboro Man was a strong, rugged-looking man who rode a mighty horse and traveled throughout the country promoting tobacco products. He appeared in television, radio, print, and billboard ads for decades. When the United States Surgeon General deemed tobacco smoke as unhealthy in the 1960s, the beginning of the end for the Marlboro Man had begun. The Surgeon General began an anti-smoking campaign by requiring all cigarette companies to place its warning label on each package sold in the country. The warning included the wording that tobacco smoke can cause lung cancer. Soon, the pressure was on the tobacco companies to curb their advertising campaigns. In 1955, tobacco sales reached 15 billion in the United States alone. After the Marlboro Man was introduced to the American public, that total reached 20 billion. This increase was largely based on the Marlboro Man campaign. The company also started an advertising scheme by offering genuine Marlboro Man gear for sale. These commodities were of high quality that appealed to the outdoor type of person. The gear ranged from camping equipment, hats, to outdoor clothing. It was very successful in its time. This success came at a great expense though. 4 men who portrayed the Marlboro Man died of lung cancer, earning Marlboro cigarettes as the cowboy killer. The Marlboro Man is still popular in some parts of Europe and Japan, where smoking is still in vogue. The Beatles are an English group of musicians from Liverpool, England, that took America by storm with their appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on primetime television. The group's first appearance was seen by more than 73 million viewers in February 1964, introducing the band to the American people. In the months to follow, the group became the biggest rock and roll band ever to hit the United States. The group's success opened the door for other British bands to make their way to America. Bands such as the Rolling Stones, The Who, The Kinks, and the Dave Clark Five were soon playing their music to American audiences. The Beatles were made up by four of the finest musicians to ever play rock music. Their lead singer was Paul McCartney and drummer Ringo Starr. Both still play to this day. Two of the original members, singers/songwriters, John Lennon and George Harrison, have tragically passed away, but their music lives in American culture to this day. The Beatles have sold more records in the United States than any other country in the world. There was controversy in the U.S. prior to the group's first appearance. Conservative Americans viewed the Beatles as upstarts, with brash, new ideas, lyrics, and sound. The young generation of the time was ready for a change, and the Beatles gave them what they wanted. They were nicknamed the Mop Tops because of their long, bowl-like haircuts that flew in the face of convention in the 60s. Nothing was going to stop the Beatles, though. Their music is as popular today as it was 50 plus years ago. This February, the Grammy Awards presented a special telecast celebrating the 50th anniversary of the group's first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. The Griffith Observatory is a planetarium and an exhibit hall located in Los Angeles' Griffith Park. It features several astronomical displays and telescopes in the Hollywood Hills in the Los Feliz district of the city. The observatory was built on land donated by Griffith J. Griffith in 1896. Griffith was a Welsh-born philanthropist and mining tycoon who wanted to give the public access to a state-of-the-art observatory, so it was free of charge to visitors. He felt common people should be able to enjoy the wonders of the universe and not be solely for the scientific community. Griffith donated 3,015 acres of land specifically to house the observatory that opened on May 14, 1935. During the first 5 days after the opening, the planetarium averaged more than 13,000 visitors a day. One of the major attractions was the Foucault pendulum that is designed to show the Earth's rotation, and the Zeiss reflecting telescope. The observatory has a striking view of Los Angeles and Hollywood, and the Pacific Ocean can be seen on clear days from there. In 2002, the planetarium was subjected to a $93 million renovation and expansion, which closed the museum for 4 years. After it reopened in 2006, the facility expanded underground with new exhibits, a cafe, a gift shop, and a theater. The Wilder Hall of the Eye section concentrates on the astronomical aspect of the observatory. It is where people can view the stars through the observatory's telescope and features an interactive exhibit that is very popular. The Amundsen Hall of the Sky is another popular attraction for viewing images in the night sky that are visible to the naked eye. The observatory frequently stages viewing nights when the public is invited to bring their own telescopes. It is open daily and remains free of charge. The United States is a country that has people from all over the world. Not only do many people speak different languages, many people practice different religions. Most people in the US identify as being Christian, but only half of those people attend church on a regular basis. The second most popular religion is Judaism. The third most common religion in the US is Islam. Other religions practiced in the US include Hinduism and Buddhism. About 20% of all people in the US say they don't practice any religion. One of the founding principles of the United States is religious freedom, which means people can practice whatever religion they want without being discriminated against. This is even guaranteed in the US Constitution. This is one reason why the United States has no official religion. Because there are so many different religions in the United States, there are many different types of houses of worship. Christians attend churches. Jews and Hindus attend temples. Muslims attend mosques. Many people use what they wear to reflect their religious beliefs. For example, some Islamic women wear a scarf called hijab to cover their head. It is disrespectful to ask a Muslim woman to take off her hijab or ask her to show you what is under it. Male followers of an Indian religion called Sikhism usually wear cotton turbans. Again, it is wrong to take a person's turban off or ask that they take it off. Male followers of Hasidism, a branch of Judaism, have long curls on the side of their heads. They wear a fringe prayer shawl. Other Jewish men may wear a small cap on their heads called a yarmulke. This is supposed to be a constant reminder that God is above them. The Woodstock Music and Art Fair, commonly called Woodstock, was an American music and art celebration that took place from August 15th through 18th, 1969. It was billed as 3 days of peace and music and was a defining event for the young generation of Americans of the time. The 1960s was an impactful era in American history. Many of the events that took place during those controversial 10 years profoundly affect modern American society today. The war in Vietnam was raging in the 60s, and the popular president, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated in 1963. These are just two of the events that defined the decade. There were many more historic events during that era that deeply divided the country. Woodstock was designed to show how the young generation can coexist with the older generation of Americans living in harmony with one another. Although the event did not occur in the town of Woodstock, New York, the city has become synonymous with the celebration. More than 400,000 young people gathered at the dairy farm in the small town of White Lake, New York, to witness music history in the making. Rolling Stone magazine listed the event as one of the 50 moments that changed the history of rock and roll. Some of the biggest names in rock history performed at the 3-day event, including The Who, The Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, and the late Jimi Hendrix. In all, 32 acts performed at the outdoor festival, and it was free charge to all. 2 soundtracks were released in the following 2 years. Both albums featured the live performances with introductions. The documentary film Woodstock was released in 1970 and received an Oscar in the Academy Award for Feature Documentary category. It was also deemed a culturally significant by the United States Library of Congress. The United States Department of Veteran Affairs, more commonly known as the Veterans Administration, is an organization dedicated to provide services for all veterans of the U.S. military. It was formed in July 1930 and today employs approximately 280,000 people at hundreds of its offices throughout the U.S. Its annual budget for the 2014 fiscal year is nearly $153 billion, making it one of the largest government agencies in existence today. The department is broken into three main subdivisions. It consists of Veterans Health Administration, the Veterans Benefits Administration, and the National Cemetery Administration. The VA Health Administration is responsible for providing veterans with all health care issues, while the Benefits Administration is designed to help veterans in areas such as guaranteed home loans, insurance vocational rehabilitation, and educational benefits. The National Cemetery Administration provides burial and memorial benefits and is entrusted with the maintenance of the VA's cemeteries. The VA has served U.S. veterans from several wars, beginning with survivors of World War I. It has continued the tradition of serving former military members by providing services for those veterans who need help readjusting to civilian life. Many of these veterans, especially those who saw combat during their time in the military, are in need of basic medical services for wounds suffered in conflicts. This was the original concept for the creation of the VA. Since that time, the VA has expanded greatly and now provides additional services such as educational benefits and home buying assistance. It also helps those veterans who had become homeless after their service to their country ended. There are approximately 30 million military veterans living in the U.S. today. That number represents nearly 10% of the population of the country today. One of the most impactful television series ever to run on American TV was Married with Children. The show aired on the Fox channel for 11 years, and many believe it was responsible for keeping the news station alive during the early years. In 1987, commercial TV in the United States was dominated by the Big Three: the American Broadcasting Company, ABC, the National Broadcasting Company, NBC, and the Columbia Broadcasting Company, CBS. When the Fox channel appeared on the scene, few people gave it much chance to survive in the face of its stiff competition, but Married with Children changed all that. The show followed the exploits of a dysfunctional family that lived in a fictional suburb of Chicago. The main character was the father, Al Bundy, who was a lovable loser living with his self-centered wife and bratty kids. Together, the family makes Al's life miserable as he stumbles and fumbles his way through life. Al works as a shoe salesman that pays very little and has little chance of promotion. Al is an endearing character who gained the adoration of the American public for many years. The actor Ed O'Neill, who played Al, said that people still approach him to this day calling him Al or Mr. Bundy. O'Neill also said that playing the character for so many years made it difficult for him to find work once the series ended because people associated him with Al. One of the things that made the show so popular is that no subject was off limits to the writers. It was a controversial show that dealt with controversial subjects. Many people boycotted the show because of its racy content, but Fox continued on. The show has cultivated a cult-like following that began in the 80s and continues today. One of the most recent social changes taking place in the United States and in the world is social networking. Social networking in itself is not a new development. These types of groups have been in existence for at least 150 years, and probably longer than that. In the times before the invention of the personal computer and the advent of the World Wide Web, social networking was done in person. People who had similar likes and interests would gather together to share experiences, make new contacts, and promote themselves or their businesses. On the internet, social networking websites made their first appearance during the late 1990s. The first major social networking website in the United States was MySpace. MySpace was a comprehensive social networking site that allowed its users to exchange messages, share pictures, and make new friends in a way that was never thought of in the past. With MySpace, people who did not go out much could reach out to others from the comfort of their own homes. In 2004, Facebook was created. It was originally a website created for use by Harvard University students, graduates, and faculty, but it soon expanded to include just about everyone. Facebook is an elaborate social networking site that has grown incredibly fast. It is now larger than some of the largest companies in the world. It is a website that is in constant change. New features are added regularly. Facebook has revolutionized the way people stay connected with each other and the rest of the world. The way it works is simple. Users can set up a new account easily. All a new user needs is an email address to start. Once a person has created an account, he or she can invite friends by sending a request out to people they know who also have their own Facebook pages. Once you get started, making new friends will come easily. In the United States, people love to throw parties for many reasons. Of course, there are the usual birthday parties, but some people even have parties to celebrate divorces. No matter what kind of party you are going to, it's a good idea to make sure you are actually invited. It's considered rude to just show up unless the host, the person giving the party, invited you. You will either get a paper, email, or verbal invitation to a party. Alternately, you can also go as a guest of someone else invited, like as his or her date. Once invited, it is very important to let the host know if you are actually going to show up. Many times, hosts have a party catered that is other people who prepare the food. They need to know how much food to have. Letting them know if you are showing up or not helps the host and is considered polite. It's also important to be relatively punctual for a party. Most parties in the US never start exactly when they say they will. Many people like to be fashionably late. That is, showing up about 30 minutes after the party is supposed to start. People like to do this to make a big entrance. Showing up more than 30 minutes before or after is considered rude, though. If you show up too early, you are likely to interrupt valuable preparation time of the host. If you show up too late, you are just being rude. Even if it is not a birthday party, it is polite to bring a gift for the host. It doesn't need to be a fancy gift. A bottle of wine or even flowers is polite and will be appreciated. A bridal shower is a party when a woman who is about to get married is showered with gifts and well wishes. A bride-to-be will often register at one or several department stores and create a list of things she would like people to give her as presents. This makes it easy for guests of both the bridal shower and the wedding itself to know what kind of things the bride wants. A registry also makes sure that there are no duplicate presents. A bride may want a blender, but she sure doesn't want to receive 3 and have to deal with the hassle of returning extras. Most bridal shower gifts are items that a newly married couple needs to start their life together. These gifts include dishes, pots, pans, and even appliances like toasters and microwave ovens. Many brides also look forward to receiving some money. Cash or checks are considered appropriate gifts for a bridal shower. The money comes in handy to help pay for an expensive wedding. Sometimes people bring tasteless gifts like lingerie to bridal showers. Some people think those gifts are good because they help the new couple spice up their married life. Others find these types of presents embarrassing. While many bridal showers are surprises, others are planned with input from the bride-to-be. A bridal shower can be small and intimate and held in someone's home. It can also be a larger affair held at a restaurant or a catering hall. Sometimes snacks and desserts are served or a full meal can be offered. Traditionally, bridal showers were women-only affairs. However, more and more showers are now co-ed with men and women. Traditionally, men are not invited to bridal showers, but now more showers include men and the groom-to-be. Like many parties in the US, there would be no dancing at the bridal shower, just eating and people chatting. Some bridal showers even have games. While many women are involved in planning their bridal showers, a baby shower usually comes as a complete surprise. A baby shower is a party where a pregnant woman is showered with gifts and good wishes. A baby shower is usually given by a close female friend or relative of the mother-to-be. Sometimes, co-workers of a pregnant person will also throw a baby shower. The baby shower is usually given when the mother-to-be is between 6 and 9 months pregnant. Sometimes, though, because predicting the due date of a baby isn't always exact, a baby shower can happen after the baby is born. A baby shower can be held in someone's home or outside, like in a restaurant or a catering hall. Traditionally, only women are invited to a baby shower. However, more and more baby showers are also including the father-to-be. Like with a bridal shower, a mother-to-be will often register a wish list of things she wants at one or several stores. This list usually consists of things the mother wants for her baby, including clothes, diapers, and even furniture like high chairs and cribs. This way, friends and family members can go to the store and buy something from the list. Registering helps make sure that there aren't repeat items like 30 bottles when a new mom only needed 15. Some baby showers also feature a paper mache wishing well. This is not just for decoration. People can put cards inside with wishes for the new baby and mom. Most of these cards also contain money or gift cards to help the mom-to-be buy whatever else she needs for the baby. Sometimes there are games at a baby shower. In one game, everyone guesses the due date of the baby. Another game has people taste baby food and guess the flavor.